Good day, fellow geeks. On this week's episode of Geeks of Azeroth, we've got Daz and LiQiuD here to talk to us about creators of the storm and everything else Heroes of the Storm. So stay tuned for Geeks of Azeroth.
You're listening to the Blizzard Community Podcast, produced by Geeks, for Geeks. Welcome to Geeks of Azeroth.
Hi, everybody. My name's Tarley. With me, as always, I've got Britzza.
Hey.
I've got Gary.
Hello.
And as I said in the intro, we've got Daz.
Howdy, howdy.
And we've got LiQiuD.
Hello.
And Britzza, you're going to be leading us through. You're going to leading the charge on the show today, so I'm going to let you take over.
Yeah,
on running the show.
Because since you're the in the privileged position of being the wooden spoon tier of Heroes of the Storm, you feel a little bit less confident.
That's the league I got placed into. Wooden spoon. They gave me my own special emblem and everything.
Oh, we're gonna enjoy that, especially if I'm casting. So as Tarley says, I'm gonna just take us through this. So we know who we are. We should know by now for doing this for 4 years. So we're not going to linger too long on us, but quickly, Tarley, Matt, SleepyGary. God, I'm already messing it up. What have you guys been up to this week? Anything particularly special?
Lots of Overwatch.
Lots of Overwatch League and all that stuff.
Go London, winning stage 1. That was dope. Dope games.
I know. It's one of the few things the UK's got going it for at the moment. You know, a 12-man South Korean team wrecking esports. SleepyGary, anything special?
A little bit of everything. I have maintained level 5 on every hero in Heroes for a long time, and then I kind of fell off, so I had a little bit of catching up to do, which I managed to finally finish, getting Hanzo, Blaze, and Maiev to 5. I think yesterday.
How did you forget about Maiev?
I don't know.
How did you forget that experience?
Especially, probably my new favorite character, which I'll go into more detail later on. But yeah,
wait,
I approve.
Pre or post nerf? Because do you still like her after yesterday?
Yes, actually. Honestly, so pre-nerf, I saw the nerf coming miles away because I was playing quick match without tanks, and I'm like, I am kind of like a tank, and then I look at my damage, and I'm like, oh. And I still kill everyone like an assassin. So, yeah, I'm not surprised with the nerfs, and they don't feel so bad, honestly. You can't just stand in the middle of everything at level 1, but you probably shouldn't be doing that anyways.
Yeah.
Time your Ds appropriately, and you're fine.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'll skip over me because I haven't had a lot of time to do much of anything with real life stuff and work and whatnot. But
just tea and crumpets as usual.
Tea and crumpets, yeah. And daily messages to the Queen, all that sort of stuff. You know, we've got a royal wedding, yay! But moving on to our guests, Daz, LiQiuD, do you want to introduce yourselves and your podcast, just to those who on this listening to the show who might not know?
Sure. I'm Daz. Hey guys. Basically, I do a show with LiQuid and Mystic, and we do a show called The Nexus Trolls. I almost forgot the name of our show first. I do that every time. It's a Heroes of the Storm podcast. We cover news, HGC, we do some fun stuff on the side too, but we're a weekly podcast. We do it live on Twitch at twitch.tv/TrollsGG. We're part of the Trolls GG Entertainment Network, and LiQuid's got another show on that podcast too, so that's a good little segue for LiQuid to introduce himself.
So I'm LiQuiD. I started with Daz on the Nexus Trolls, and then little under a year ago, we started a second show called Troll and HGC, which focuses just on Heroes Esports, which is also on twitch.tv/TrollsGG. So lots of time spent talking about Heroes.
There's plenty to talk about with Heroes, especially with HGC just exploding at the moment. And if anyone's listening and thinks, hey, I like the sound of these guys and I'm fed up with Geeks of Azeroth after almost 4 years, we'll put the links in the show notes below and wish you well onto a far better podcast. But With that, and we touched on Maev, so we might as well jump into. It's not news of the week, but it is kind of pre-discussion about HOTS, because I thought before we get into Creators of the Storm, it might be good to talk about what's happening in HOTS at the moment. And Maev is particularly the hot topic. I listened to your show from last week and about how OP she was, some of the win rates on her in particular, and we didn't know that at that time that the nerf was going to come in, but it's come in pretty sudden. It hasn't waited for a reset, so open it to the floor. What are the thoughts of Maev pre-nerf and also post-nerf?
Pre-nerf, she was so OP it wasn't even funny. Like how she got out of PTR, I still don't understand. She was crazy strong. She's still pretty good, but she was crazy strong when it was launched.
It's so much fun to play an OP hero, though, because you go in, you just feel like you can't do anything wrong. Like you'd go in, you jump into the fray, just like Gary was saying. Like you feel like you're a tank, you feel like you're an assassin. You can even feel like you're a support sometimes too, even though you've got no healing. It's crazy, but yeah, she was a lot of fun to play. I haven't had a chance to play her post nerf, but I see her win rates come down quite a bit. But yeah,
a little bit.
Essentially, what I saw from my little bit after post nerf that I played her is now you just actually have to, think to play her. Like it's not honestly that bad. Damage on your Q got decreased a little bit, and you're not as tanky because you lost the armor. But it's not a huge deal. Right. You can still stay in there long enough. You just gotta kind of poke in and out with your Qs now instead of stand there.
Yep. Before the nerf, it was great. I just go in, pick up my keyboard, start mashing against my head, and everyone would die.
Whereas now you mash your head on a certain side of the keyboard, or you just roll it.
Yeah,
a technique to it.
To the left now.
It's gonna be a little more accurate with my nose when she keys it hits. So,
so it's worth talking about the nerf. So in particular, and Daz, LiQuiuD, you might be able to talk a bit more about this. But what have the nerfs actually hit most of all? Was because you guys were talking about some of the armor behind her and how they were more likely to tackle her health pool, but it seems they kind of not really dealt with that, and they've decided just to pick and choose some of the talents.
Yeah, it feels like what they focused on doing was just tweaking her down a little and making her not quite as survivable. So they lowered, but they also lowered her damage. So her health, her damage, and her armor all got nerfed. The D no longer giving her passive armor, I think, is great. Her trait, it didn't need to be there. It was too much while it was there. So I think they just said, okay, we way overtuned her when we put her on PTR, and now we're going to bring it back instead of waiting 2 weeks. I like to wear a tinfoil hat from time to time on our show.
Oh, and we do too, believe me.
I'll tell Daz, like, the whole reason that this didn't wait for the normal, like, okay, we're going to do a balance patch the next week. They wanted to have this patch up to date early enough that it could be played at Western and Eastern Clash. And if they waited until the next Tuesday, they would have run into a scheduling conflict. So instead, they dropped it this week.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. I didn't think about that one.
And I can't wait to see what the pros do with her. Like, that's going to be crazy fun to watch.
Do you think she's going to be a go-to pick straight away, or a player's going to be a little bit unnerving about how she fits into the meta?
I think there will be teams that will jump in with her right away. It's really weird because we get this weird spot. Week 4 is this week. Week 5 is next week. And then we get a break going into the 2 clashes, the Eastern and the Western Clash. So when she would have typically been picked up and we would have seen it right away, which would have been not next weekend, but the weekend after, there are no games that weekend. So we'll have to wait and see what happens at the Clash. And the reason I say it's hard to tell is because when you go into an international event like a Clash, even though the Western Clash is only going to be EU and NA, it's still an international event. And each of those events tends to bring its own kind of meta around that event. So it's hard to say whether or not we'll see her or whether we'll just see her get banned the whole time, or like who's going to jump in. I think you're more likely to see it at Eastern Clash, where like the Chinese team or the Taiwanese team, or maybe even some of the Korean teams are more willing to like take a chance on it and see what happens. Where NA and EU, unless they decide, oh my God, she's crazy OP, we have to have her like they have with Hanzo, we won't see her at Western Clash.
Awesome.
You never really know what to expect until you see the pros
Right.
pull out these guys. Like you might think a hero's not that strong, and then all of a sudden they're playing them in all their games, and they're like, okay, maybe I should start playing this in my games, and then you get like Hanzo and Genji banned for second ban like for the next few weeks, right? Because it kind of filters down to your regular player base, but it tends to be like we all wait to see what the pros do, and then we decide what's OP ourselves.
Right.
And speaking of pros, Gary.
I am far from pro. But that being said,
I'm very pro.
If you saw any NA or EU teams run Maev, is there a particular one you think would try it out at the Clash?
That's hard. I think Poik could do some crazy things with Maev. And we know we'll be seeing them at the Clash, so that's a possibility. NA teams, maybe. So I'm not going to answer NA because NA is such a disaster. Nobody knows who's going yet after last night's games. So I'm not, I want to say, yeah, probably Heroes Hearth would bust something like that out, but that's assuming they make it. I want them to make it. Whether or not everything lines up for them to get into the Clash this time around is still up in the air.
So I haven't been following HGC quite as closely as I have previously because Overwatch League has kind of consumed my esports viewing times, admittedly.
Right.
But is Tempo still in the running for?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
They're sort of. NA. I was being serious when I said NA is kind of a mess. Tempo is still in the top 4, right? In fact, I think after last night, they're number 1 because they're 5-1. They may have actually. I think they qualified last night. Got to remember the math. I think they did. So Tempo's going. Team Freedom lost. They were number 1 until last night or this weekend. They lost 2 that they shouldn't have lost, but they did. Team 12 is in second place or third place, tied with Team Freedom, but slightly behind on. I think they lost the head-to-head. And Heroes Hearth is the last 4th place team. And for Western Clash, like it's going to come down to this weekend and next weekend to see who ends up going.
So with that in mind, so I've always been a huge Glaurung fan, and I know he was pretty stoked. Do you think you see Tempo run it with possibly Glaurung? I mean, it seems like a hero that would be kind of his wheelhouse, or at least used to be.
Yeah, no, you're right. It kind of does. I could see that being a possibility. Tempo is weird because I very much feel like they have a lot of like super strong personalities, and so the question is Glaurung going to be able to play that, or is maybe Psalm's going to take that because he loves playing melee, right? Or even Fan to a lesser extent. Like it's kind of in a weird spot. So I could see any of those 3 running it. It's just a question of whether or not Kala thinks it's worthwhile and they spend some time on it, whether or not, it works with the drafts they have. Tempo seems to only run stuff when they're really satisfied that it's going to work the way they want it to, where if you look back at when Glaurung was on Roll20, they played a little bit looser with maybe I should do that, maybe I shouldn't, right? Like, who knows? Maybe this will work, but we're going to take a chance on it anyway and see what happens, because it was Roll20. They weren't even supposed to be there in the first place, and they were coming out number 1 in the league, right? So
yeah,
right. Like it's in that weird spot. We'll have to see. I'm looking forward to it though.
We forgot to give you a disclaimer. If you ask LiQuid an esports question, he won't stop until you interrupt him.
Yeah.
I'm good with this.
And that's the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us as always.
There's a reason. There's almost, let's see, it was like June of last year. I came to Daz and I was like, dude, I really want to talk about esports. And I started that show. And I literally started that show because I will sit there and talk about HGC. We go long most weeks. We try to hit an hour and a half, but we almost always go long because it's just Bags and my co-host, we just get into it and we just keep talking because that's what we love. So yeah, it's hard to pull me back. Sorry.
I almost think we need a separate podcast for Overwatch League just because I could probably talk about the league for hours at a time too.
Right.
And just a question for you, coming from an Overwatch League fan who doesn't really watch HGC, I find it interesting. It seems like going back to the patch, the Maiev patch, they're rolling that out rather quickly. And in Overwatch, they just like maybe 2-3 weeks ago just had a very meta changing patch, and they're waiting till the end of a stage to actually roll that out into Overwatch League. So a stage is every 5 weeks. So how quickly do they roll out patches in Heroes? Almost immediately, or maybe the week after?
It's 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
But what's interesting is way back in, I want to say, Phase 1, Part 1 of 2017, or maybe even before that, back before HGC was even formed, they would make everybody play on the tournament realm, and they did it like Overwatch League, where it wouldn't come out until between like parts or between major tournaments, right? Like they had a schedule worked out like that, very similar to the way Overwatch League works now. And instead, like, people were watching the game and they were going, well, wait, this doesn't make sense. Like, why are heroes that I know have changed not being played changed wise, and why is this new hero not available? And like it brought this like everybody in Twitch chat was going nuts, and there was a lot of feedback and everything else. And it turned out that they changed that rule for that reason, and now they do the 2-week delay between patches. So it'll be interesting. I actually like. There's a lot that Overwatch League is doing right, and I think that is one of the things. It just comes down to whether or not like there's so much more invested into Overwatch League, I guess is the way I would describe it, right? So they have to be a little more careful. And when you have the owners pouring the amount of money into the league to even be a member of the league, like changing the balance patch on them midstream seems like a really bad idea.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And it will be interesting to see how the new Warcraft Mythic Dungeon Invitational system works out, because they've just introduced how the new tournament server is going to play into that. So whether they keep hotfixes and patches like for a set period of time, like 2 weeks with HOTS, or whether they, as you were saying, Tarley, wait for almost an entire invitational set to finish, and then they'll go and fix it and do all the tuning. So pros and cons, maybe.
I almost think...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I almost think Heroes' way of doing it is better for the players' perspective, because the players, they'll go home and they'll continue to stream, or they'll be practicing on live servers where the meta is totally different than what they're playing for the tournament. So I think HOT's way of doing it is almost better, just to get that rolled out as fast as possible for the tournament.
And what's interesting is that's actually one of the things the pros say is it's like it's so hard for us to practice because the only time we can practice is on a tournament realm, and not all the regions have a tournament realm. Or in the case of EU, it's like, well, I think in the UK, your connection to the tournament realm is great, but in Germany, it sucks. And so it's like, how do you practice and how do you scrim? How do you say I'm going to stay on the tournament realm when, 400 millisecond latency means you basically aren't playing the game, right? But I also think it's interesting to touch on the mythic tournament realm and how that's going to work. WoW is a very different beast than I think Overwatch League and HOTS is, in that patches that drop, it'll be interesting to see if they can, stick to a 2-week cycle. Or I almost feel like they have to say the whole season's going to be on this patch, because you see things shift like so dramatically in a patch, and a lot of times it's content. The pre-patch that just happened for Battle for Azeroth, that completely changes everything. Would you really want to drop that into a Mythic season? Like, that would be crazy to me. Like, you just made Mythic easy. Why would you drop that patch? Like,
and in WoW we've definitely seen patches where they'll just totally make a class spec pretty much irrelevant towards high-end content. So it would be interesting for players to have to totally change their comp mid-season. So.
Well, a lot of this might come down to just the different styles of games. Like, people who play MOBAs are used to things shaking up every few weeks, because, that's what we've come to expect. We get a new hero, and we get reworks, and we get this on a super regular basis. And Overwatch changes pretty regularly, but,
it's more like every 3 months maybe for a meta shift. We're looking at 3 months versus 3-4 weeks for between heroes. So I think that might be why Overwatch League's a little bit more cautious with
well, we've rolled out this new patch, but we're going to wait to change it.
Yeah.
Whereas Heroes is like, we'll give you 2 weeks, get familiar with what's current, and then we'll play on it.
Right. Well, in the 2 weeks, lets them do some interesting stuff with the tournament realm and everything else, right? So they can say, well, in the next week, practice on the tournament realm, and then the week after that, because you're going into now the new hero week, you should be playing on live. Or they're still on the tournament realm because they released a hot fix or a balanced patch, and you won't be playing on the balanced patch. You're playing on the hero patches. It's problematic to a certain degree for the pros, but less so. I think you're right, just because of the way the content's released in a MOBA compared to every other game. It makes sense to do something like that. I still think they can fix their implementation, though.
Yeah, it really benefits the teams that are good at adapting too. I mean, it's nice to have that kind of steady bit where you can like practice on the same patch for like, months on end and get like that consistency. But it's cool because you get to see the innovative teams come up with things every couple of weeks, and it makes things a little bit more interesting. And I feel like it benefits those teams for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, you can definitely tell those teams too. Like those are the teams that are consistently doing well. I think that's what I attributed a lot of like Roll20 success last season to. They always seemed to be able to adapt to whatever new thing was coming out a lot better than the rest of NA. Maybe not better than the EU teams, but they seem to take it on NA.
I would say they even did a better job at rolling with the changes than EU did, but not. The problem was there weren't enough changes going into like BlizzCon for them to roll with that and say, oh, check it out. We totally, we can do something nobody's seen before. That worked for the first week in the group stage, but then when they got to the elimination stage, there were no new tricks, right? There were no new patches coming out because BlizzCon's going on. Who's going to make a change at that week? So
awesome. And it's interesting to think about how much fine tuning we're talking about here, and then they have to go and throw in a hero every like 3 to 4 months, which completely throws it all out of whack anyway. So,
right.
And I guess segueing off of that a little bit, with the heroes we're seeing, what are you guys happy with the sort of the variety of heroes we're seeing? Are you happy with some of the design philosophies behind some of those characters? Like not necessarily just Maiev, but also Blaze more recently, perhaps some of the stuff that's hinted at in the future. Where are you guys feeling that heroes characters are sitting right now? Are they good?
I can't believe that we've got 70 some odd here. I'm not even sure what the count's at now. And almost every single one is very unique in their own way. And one of them's a freaking dragon. That's really cool. I like that you turn into a dragon. I guess so.
2 of them.
Well, one's more of a... Yeah,
one's a little tiny... She never shifts into dragon form, but she's still a dragon.
But it's so cool. Like, I feel like every time a new hero comes out, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like we've got a hero that does something completely different than all of the other heroes we've got. And it kind of speaks to the Blizzard's creativity a bit. And I mean, just I have no idea what's going to be coming out next and like what kind of heroes we're going to see, which is super cool and it's exciting. And it's one of the reasons that it makes talking about HOTS, especially like in a podcast, really easy because there's new stuff every 3-4 weeks. You get the new hero. There's balanced patches every week or two. There's constantly content coming out, so it makes it always interesting.
It was interesting for like when Heroes first came out. You could definitely draw parallels between hero design with HOTS and like League of Legends, but they've really been impressing me lately. And I'm not an avid player of HOTS, but just looking at the hero design, it just really impresses me how unique the heroes are, especially lately, the newer ones that are coming out. They're just really interesting designs that you don't see in any other kind of MOBA with their mechanics. It's really cool stuff.
And they maintain their fantasy behind their characters so well.
Very well.
Like, so it took me a long time to realize it, but I was so impressed with like Maiev's design, and I'm like, she just feels like a Night Elf Warden, and I couldn't figure out why. And I'm like, it's everything. Like, even down to her Q, what your targeting reticle on your Q is a crescent moon. And like, just the little details that they put in there. I don't know if Blizzard intended that, but it's Blizzard, so I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt that they did.
I don't think they did that accidentally.
No, they definitely did that on purpose. And I like the uniqueness. I'm still bummed over what they did to Valeera, but I like the uniqueness of every hero coming out. I love Blaze, and his kit is a lot of fun. I didn't think I was going to like him when they announced it, and I was like, man, really, a tank that is Blaze? That doesn't make sense. But you know, once you get used to him and you learn how to use his kit, and then he's a lot of fun. And then watching pros use it, and it's like, oh man, I didn't even think of that. That's a great use for things like Bunker. And when we did our show about Blaze, we were like, nobody's going to pick Bunker. Bunker's like the most useless talent. Everybody's going with the other one. I don't even remember the name of it at this point. But everybody's going that. Nobody's going to pick Bunker, and everybody's like, Bunker is the way to go. So, yeah. It's definitely cool. They do a really good job with what they do with heroes.
And as an Overwatch player, what excites me is to go in there and play the Overwatch heroes that have come into HOTS, and it's surprising how almost perfectly they play like their counterparts in Overwatch. I can hop on Tracer and just know how to play her, or hop on Diva and just know how to play her because the play style they captured really well.
I just wish they'd drop Reinhardt. Like, I'm dying for Reinhardt.
Right, he would be great. Or Winston.
No. It's got to be Reinhardt. Okay. Everybody tells me that, or Winston. I'm like, no. Look, I'm a warrior main in HOTS, and the only warrior I really enjoy playing aside from Diva in Overwatch is Reinhardt. So it needs to be Reinhardt. You can do Winston later. Just bring me Reinhardt now.
I think Reinhardt will be a BlizzCon reveal character. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep.
And it's really hard to tell or sort of predict the release schedule. I know Blizzard fans are notorious for trying to predict everything and everything.
We don't do that at all.
We don't do that at all. No, definitely not. But it's interesting because with every other game, it seems the Nexus is where heroes go to retire. You know, that's why Maev's joined us, because her story in WoW is finished for now. And you have heroes who just sort of step in when their time's done. Varian did the same thing. But with Overwatch, it's more a case that obviously the heroes don't retire. They have to think about the gap, and I guess to an extent some of the hype behind certain characters. And I think characters like Reinhardt offer something really unique. Like the idea of a force shield that you have to sort of orientate. I can't think of a hero that has anything quite like that. Obviously Blaze's charge ability would probably be mimicked in some way. So there's also a little bit of hybridity behind some of the abilities they could choose. So it's probably quite difficult, I'd imagine, because some of the ideas that character designers must get is they probably subconsciously otherwise inherit it from other characters. Hence why they kind of got stuck in that hole with Widowmaker, where it's like, reskin Nova, we'll just do that. And that makes total sense, because I remember us talking on this show months ago about how would you fit her in? She's just too like Nova, and they decided to do that. So yeah, I think there's a mix between sharing abilities, which I guess adds a certain level of competitiveness, especially at the pro scene where you have characters that can do the same things kind of, and also offering something new, which is in line with their lore as well. Awesome. So last, I guess before we start getting into Creators of the Storm, what are we hoping for in 2018? We've talked about Reinhardt at BlizzCon. Like, what are we all expecting for 2018, or what do we really want to have on our gift list towards the end of the year?
Voice chat. Sorry,
I worry about voice chat.
It's all right. Well, you guys, at least two of you are Overwatch players. Mm-hmm. Does voice chat really bother you?
No, you can always turn it off if people are being obnoxious. So it's useful when it's useful, and you can turn it off if it's not being useful.
Right. Well, and that's why I want it. It's specifically for ranked. I don't care about quick match or unranked, but ranked, come on, man.
Yeah, having callouts, especially over voice, is a lot better during combat. You don't have to sit and type like something's happening while you're trying to fight. So,
right.
Yeah,
and it's
coordination, it's great.
And it's terrible when you're like, obviously your team's venting fury at someone in particular. You can see heroes standing still because they're obviously typing out the longest ever flame war you can imagine. Right. You're like, dude, just hit enter and join the fight. We really need you in this.
Right. Instead, like, spend 5 seconds, yell at me on voice, and then let's carry on. So we can
yeah. Explain how well you know my mother and all the story behind that. And
right.
Just get on with things, yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe Sniper is asking questions in chat too. Any speculation on this hero? But
that one's hard.
We've had leak lists in the past, but I think they're like more or less run out now.
Yeah, they're basically done. And we haven't gotten a new one lately. If you look at the release, kind of the flow, we're due for an Overwatch character, but they throw in a curveball and they're like, oh yeah, we know we've released 2 WoW characters back to back, but here's the 3rd WoW character. Have a nice day. So like there is no I should rephrase that. There is a rhyme or reason. It's whatever they get done first. And it's hard to say what they're going to get done next. I do what Super Dave in chat said is Imperius should be the next one. I've heard that rumor, but I haven't. It's rumor, right? And it's not like coming from the guy who called 8 out of 9 new heroes rumor. It's just that's the rumor. So
with Imperius, and sorry, Daz, I'll get to you in just a second, but Imperius, the lore screams tank, but does the game need a tank, right? Because I'm thinking about, one-on-oneing Diablo and things like that. It screams like someone who could just sit there and stand his own in any situation, but, they might feel, actually, we need an assassin, so they might plug him as something like that. I'm not entirely sure.
He's going to be a specialist.
You're getting LiQuiud started here again. He's a tank main. He loves more tanks coming to the game. So another tank is I know what he's going to say to that one.
Imperius does seem more like a specialist, but
okay.
We saw a screenshot, or not a screenshot, but their notes for the update had Maiev listed as a tank, and then they changed her.
Well, she was for the first week,
right? And that's what everybody said. Like, you released her and you called her an assassin, but clearly she was a tank for the entire first 3 days. And now is she really an assassin, or did you mean for her to be a tank and something changed at the last minute? Like, what was the story behind that, right? But yeah, it'll be interesting. Whatever happens, it'll be fun.
Definitely. Daz, what were you going to say to, I guess, highlights for 2018 or even what's coming next?
Well, to be honest, I just hope #DeadMOBA doesn't come true. I love the game, and I think it's super interesting. It's one that I've dedicated a lot of time to, and I just hope to see growth in the game. To be honest with you, HGC has been a good start to that, and it's big now. It's in a stable spot, and I hope just more people keep coming into the game.
I honestly think it has a lot of room to grow this year because we've seen a lot of decline in League of Legends in particular. A lot of viewers have moved on to Overwatch or just looking for something new. And I think Heroes of the Storm has a great opportunity to take a big chunk of those viewers and stuff for HGC.
We're gonna steal some of your Overwatch viewers. Hope you're okay with that.
Curse
that realistically, I would
lots
love
to
to
share.
do
Just
that.
pass them along.
I would love to do that, but realistically, it's not going to happen. I mean, come on. I'm the HGC
Debbie Downer
man.
here. I'm the only one who can be a Debbie Downer here. Come on. And I've been calling StarCraft a #dead game for a long time, and it's not actually dead, so probably don't have to worry about it.
You do that mostly just to trigger me.
I do.
We all know.
It's very true. What I would like to see out of Heroes out of 2018 is obviously more Overwatch characters, because I'm always interested in those. # please bring Bastion.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah. But I'd really love to see some. Moira.
Moira would be a really cool character.
Yeah.
Spots.
But every time they do a weekly brawl that's PvE oriented, I've loved it. I thought it's been really unique. So I'd personally like to see just kind of more PvE stuff in general in HOTS, because I'm not very good at the game. So I'd anything that's PvE oriented, I'd love to play, or just the hooking stitches across the pool. That was always a fun game mode too.
That was a great game mode.
Yeah.
Oh, and right now, they have a Mario Kart-ish type race going on as a brawl. That's
I
a lot
saw
of fun.
pictures of that on Reddit. I thought it was a joke.
No, it's
Check that out.
seriously, that's what it's doing. It's a lot of fun. Once you get so it just your character drives towards the mouse, so you have to kind of get used to how you drive. But once you get used to it, it's actually a lot of fun.
I'm assuming it's a throwback to Rocket Racing or something like that. Is that
sort of, but not really? Rocket Racing was never. It's literally it. If you took Mario Kart and made it Heroes, that's what it is. I hate to say that because I'm sure that's a copyright violation for somebody somewhere, but that's it feels very much like Mario Kart.
Yeah.
So yeah, check that out if you haven't. It's a lot of fun.
And Gary, what are you hoping for?
More heroes. I love getting new heroes in HOTS. I haven't played a whole heck of a lot, but it always gives me something to bring me back into HOTS. And then occasionally there's a hero like Blaze or Maiev that I play, and I'm just this hero is the greatest, and I'm going to play it forever. and that lasts until you know the next hero's released, and that hero's the greatest, and I'm going to play it forever.
Blizzard knows how to get your money.
Yeah, they're very good at it. It's a long thing. I've at this point I open up my wallet and I'm like, okay, Blizzard, what do you want today?
Yeah.
Awesome. And go on, Tarley, you can say something.
I was going to say, even for someone who plays heroes as infrequently as I do, I'd be ashamed to admit how much money I've spent on
Definitely.
Cosmetics, just they're money makers.
And that's an interesting segue, because I know Alice Saunders mentioned in the chat about an article she sent, and we will get into that in our next news update. But to highlight, Blizzard's announced some of the Q4 stuff, and basically has said that during 2017, the numbers are really good for games like Heroes and Overwatch, and the online esports community is really driving stuff. The overall monthly users are down, which suggests that games like WoW and maybe Diablo and StarCraft are a little bit lower. But definitely, I think the esports games where there's almost that constant presence in front of you, especially with how good the community and social media presence is, means that, I think there's a lot more room to grow in these games. And Blizzard keeps throwing money as well into the prize pools for this stuff, like Mythic Dungeon Invitational, Overwatch League, and HGC. So, there's a nice juicy carrot on that stick if we ever want to actually quit our jobs.
It did come out that Activision Blizzard combined made $4 billion last year on microtransactions alone. So obviously games like Heroes and Overwatch.
Half of that is Gary.
Yeah.
That can't be right, 'cause I know how much I'm spending.
The other half is you then, LiQuiud.
Well, and every time there's a mini pet in WoW, I end up buying it for my wife, so I know that's
everyone.
helping.
Yeah.
There must be so much money behind just the mini pets alone.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think, is there anything else on Heroes before we jump into Creators of the Storm?
Well, that has to do with Heroes, so I think it's a good segue.
I think that's a good segue, and I'm not going to do a sounder. We're just going to jump straight into our discussion of the week. And obviously, we've brought these guys here not only to talk about Heroes of the Storm, but also to talk about Creators of the Storm, which is kicking off in just a few weeks. So, Daz, LiQuiuD, I'll open the floor to you. Do you want to talk about what Creators of the Storm is and what it's doing in particular this year?
Yeah, sure. Creators of the Storm, we did this in the summertime, and what we did is we got all of the content creators that we could that deal with Heroes of the Storm games, and we brought them together to do like a little lighthearted tournament. We had Haloran, who is casting Heroes of the Storm, I think right now actually. He cast the tournament last time around, and it was so much fun. We had people from Lords of the Storm, from Gangplank Squad, from the Nexus Trolls, from a whole bunch of different podcasts. And we had a whole bunch of like wacky rule sets too for your World of Warcraft fans. We had Horde versus the Alliance, so like one team could only draft Horde characters, the other team could only draft Alliance characters. We had a reverse draft, so you actually drafted for the other team. We had one game in we called it ludicrous speed mode. You can actually sandbox mode 2 times speed, so we had the game in like double speed. We had an all warriors game, an all support game.
All support game was crazy.
Yeah, me and LiQuiuD actually played in that one, and we got thrashed because we did not think our draft through. But I mean, it was so much fun, and all the great thing is too, like all the people involved are all great personalities. So we do like after game like interviews and stuff with the casters. This time around, we've got Cavalier Guest, the coach of GFE. He's gonna be casting some of the games. We've got Bahamut from Heroes Hype, and Kala, the coach of Temple Storm. They're going to be casting some games for us this year, and I think that you guys might be involved as well. We're going to show off your stuff, Tarley and SleepyGary?
I didn't realize that you had all these fun game modes. Now I'm even way more excited. I was totally nervous thinking this is just a straight up Overwatch or a straight up Heroes tournament. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do.
No, we make them interesting. Because everybody can do a straight up tournament, right? It's the wacky stuff that's funny. A Horde versus Alliance, the only way that could be better is if we had a Warsong Gulch map. I would love that.
Yeah.
The Horde versus Alliance games too, because we allow for like if you've got a Horde skin or something, like for like Sergeant Hammer's got like a Horde skin where she's an orc. So there were so many like conversations in chat of being like, I don't think that should be allowed. Like, that's not technically Horde. That's actually like, this or generic, like, or that's not actually a faction character. And we're sitting here being like, how do we police this kind of thing? But it ended up working out really well in the end. And it led to a lot of discussion. I just realized I forgot to say the date and where you can actually catch this too. It's February 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just twitch.tv/trollsgg. We've also got a website too, trolls.gg/COTS. Just COTS stands for Creators of the Storm. You get all your information there too.
Awesome. And
if you really want to see how good I am at Heroes of the Storm, you're going to want to check that out for sure.
You never know. You could be like the secret prodigy.
All I know is if I play support, I'm usually okay. So if there's no supports available, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Look out for that all warrior game.
I'll play Diva.
Last time we had Ro from Realm Maintenance, and he came on. He's like, I'm not a great Heroes of the Storm player. Like, I pretty much only play Lili. And he ended up getting Lili for like half the games, and he was on the team that won it. So nice. I know Ro is a bronze-ish player, and he doesn't play a ton of heroes. So it's definitely like we've got players of all skill ranges. Like we threw you two because we know how great you are. We threw you on a team with a grandmaster and a master player with the Gankbush squad. You guys have that fringe average Bacon and Scott from the Gankbush. So maybe they'll carry you to victory.
Yes.
Sorry guys,
I'm counting on that. Yeah.
Just stand at the back. You can just do minions, Tarley. You'll be fine. Just soak.
I got it.
And there's I think it's kind of interesting. So looking at the website, and I'll put a link in the show notes, there's a really strong presence from the Heroes of the Storm podcast community. And to me, whilst we look like kind of that cousin you invite to the party, but you never thought would actually turn up to the party, because we definitely stand out. It's like, Heroes podcast. Oh, yeah, just this random generic one that seems to have made its way in.
Go ahead.
Go on. I was going to say, to me, it's really encouraging to see that there are still so many Heroes of the Storm podcasts, because, like you say, there's a worry that it could become a #dead mobile. I don't think that for a second, but obviously some people do, and if the listeners think that, then they don't turn up and the podcasts die, and it's really good to see that level of engagement with community and content creation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was the only other thing I was going to point out, the Weekly Blizz, which is also a show on there. They do all Blizzard esports. So they cover, primarily they cover Overwatch and Heroes of the Storm, because those are the two easiest and most frequent esports to cover at this point. But they get into WoW Arena, and they also get into StarCraft a little bit too. So you guys aren't quite the only, Blizzard show.
And Realm Maintenance too. Like I previously mentioned, Ro, he covers pretty much everything too. So it's good to see, we've got those people represented as well.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And obviously we've talked to podcasters like Pat Crane, Jules Scott about organising some of the events that they've done for BlizzCon, but Creators of the Storm just seems like, to me, a logistical madness, getting all those teams together, and hosting it in that massively but also quite compact time. I mean, what does it take to organise something like this?
So I'm totally taking this one.
You go ahead.
So we started talking about this in like August of last year and started pulling things together to figure out how we were going to make it work. Mm-hmm. And at the time, like the very first time Daz and I sat down to talk about our second one, which is the one in February, I said, dude, neither one of us should play. We should just focus on getting everything done and making sure it's all good. Right. And he's like, no, you need to play. I'll take care of it. I got this. And then 2 days ago, Daz says, yeah, I think you're right. We can't play. So, like, just to give you an idea, like the amount of work, it's a labor of love, right? We both enjoy doing this. It's something that we want to do for all the other podcast creators out there. We worked with Blizzard to find a date where we wouldn't conflict with other things. So we're playing during that week between the last regular season week and then when the Eastern Clash and the Western Clash start. So there's nothing on HGC wise to conflict with it. We've worked closely with them to get some support from them. We've worked with all the various podcasts out there to find people that want to be on the show, people that want to, be in front of the camera for a game, people that want to play. We've gone through a couple of casters. Like, Daz mentioned Haloran cast last year. We wanted to get him this year, but he's busy doing dorms, which is awesome. I love the fact that he's doing dorms. But then we're like, okay, well, now we got to run around. We got to find another caster. So we worked that out. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun, I think, at the same time. I have a graphics guy that's like for the last 3 days been just churning out graphics, trying to get everything lined up for the show on the 24th so that we have all the overlays set up and everything else is ready to go too. So it's the little things though, right? Like I think the schedule spreadsheet is 100 lines long at this point, just so that we can make sure we keep track of everything and we can try and hit the schedule. So.
And then must be just
I'm really hoping I perform well in this tournament because I got everybody where I work like hyped up about it. I took the day off, like, yeah, guys, I'm playing in a video game tournament. It's gonna be so awesome. Make sure you have it play in here.
We'll get Britzza to cast that one so he can point out every little mistake you're making.
Tarley, just, you know, there's going to be huge production quality, all these great sounders and swishing graphics, and then Tarley's going to be there like, derp, derp, derp.
Yeah, that's the idea, right? That's exactly what we do. And we do.
Yeah. What's it like working with Blizzard to organize this kind of thing? I mean, we've tried to get Blizzard to talk to us, but hey, come on, Blizzard. Come on.
Well, Blizzard's got great community managers. Shout out to Lashes on Twitter. If anyone has a chance to follow her, like, definitely, she's one of the most amazing people I've ever met. She's been a really great facilitator for this and kind of like a go-between for us. Just like being really nice, and they're like super nice back to us. Like, hey, we'd love to like support the event. We worked on them with like finding a date that wouldn't conflict with other things too, so we could get that opportunity. Like, there's a lot of HGC, seems like it's going on every week, and you can't predict like 2 months ahead when they're going to have, because they don't release the full year schedule, right? So like trying to get the date nailed down was even tough. We had to postpone it from, I think, the end of January to the end of February because of some scheduling issues that Blizzard brought up like last minute, and just stuff like that. Like they've been really great about it, and the fact that they're even giving us like a moment of their time is awesome. You guys were saying like how many billions did they make in like microtransactions, right? Like, and then they're still talking to like a little community, us who are organizing a little community tournament. It really shows that like Blizzard does appreciate the community quite a bit too, and I think this is a good like little homage to that too, because it's not just us, but it's an event that's showcasing all sorts of content creators for Blizzard games. So they've been a pleasure to work with.
Nice. And picking up on that, do you like you say, having Blizz part of that, you know, when there's not necessarily any money return for them, it's not something they're putting on or funding or anything like that. They want to give us a platform, or give you guys a platform to showcase what we're doing in this community project. What do you think, given how they've responded so far, do you think they're going to do more of that in the future? I mean, something interesting that came out of BlizzCon was this greater focus on podcasts. We had Allcraft and Instance, and I know they're quite, cream of the crop podcasts, but Ro in particular has been championing this idea that podcasts are going to get more of an influence in Blizzard's day-to-day stuff. So do you think Blizzard will do more events like these, or do you think they'll do more of an official support thing for Creators of the Storm next year?
I think, I don't know necessarily about creators. I think they'll continue to support us and help us in what we're trying to accomplish. But I think Rose, to not answer that question exactly, like what Rose doing is important, right? And I think Blizzard's starting to realize that the community stuff that goes on around the games is as important as the stuff that they put out. You see that in a lot of the articles they publish now. They went out and they found writers from community sites, and this is strictly Heroes because that's what I'm focused on, but community sites that were writing good articles and have published those and featured those on the Blizzard website, and they continue to do things like that. So I think they're coming around to that. Community content is important, at least for the Heroes scene, and Lashes does a huge amount of work for that. So I can't, like, Daz is right. If you're not following Lashes, follow her. She's a wonderful person, and she's very helpful to the Heroes community. But I think we'll start to see that in the other properties too. It's interesting. Back when I used to raid, like really hardcore raid, it was interesting. Like, lore came from, oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting this, but the site that did all the raid strats. And now he works for Blizzard. And it surprised me that
Tank Spot.
Thank you. TankSpot, yes. And it surprised me though, like at that point when Laura left TankSpot and started working for Blizzard, like that we didn't see more of a push towards community sites in the Warcraft world, right? Mm-hmm. Because here's someone that you just brought in. He came from there. You know, he can't say nothing, but like all he has to say is great things about TankSpot. Why is there not that like encouragement to the community to do more things? And I hope Ro can succeed and really push that, right? Mm-hmm. Not to say we're not getting supported, because we are, but I think there's more they can do.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen a really big uptick in esports over the past few years in terms of Blizzard's focus on them, and I think even that's not like a direct way of getting of having more money come into the game, right? It's kind of like an indirect source. You get more people watching the game, more people interested, people coming out across it on Twitch, being like, I want to play this game too, keeping people more engaged in the game, right? And kind of this almost like ancillary advertising method. And I think that's what you've got with podcasts too. You're keeping the community fresh and vibrant and interested. You get people hooked on podcasts, right? They're listening every week. They want to get more news. It makes them more engaged in the game, more likely to stay, maybe more likely to spend money, right? So at the end of the day, I think promoting the community promotes the game as well and makes it more vibrant.
And actually, Daz just prompted me to remember something. At the end of last year, we saw power rankings come out going into BlizzCon, and who is going to win where for the Heroes community. Those power rankings, in addition to the one article that Blizzard picked a writer to write on the Blizzard site, were timed to release at the same time on Blizzard site, and then there were like 4 or 5 other authors that wrote their own power rankings, and Blizzard provided all of them to everybody. And so they're like, at least in the Heroes community, they're starting to look at branching out that way and saying, okay, we saw some of the similar things around mid-year last year around new hero launches and multiple community sites being able to announce information at the same time as Blizzard, right? So I think they're going in the right direction for Blizzard, at least for Heroes. It'll be interesting to see if they can increase that or if they can expand that to other properties.
Definitely. And it's one of those ongoing topics, isn't it? And we'll have to see how it develops. I think it's the relationship Blizzard, I think, has with YouTubers is perhaps a little bit different than the rest of us community. So it'll be interesting to see where they sort of start to focus in the new year. And like you say, there's more of a breaking down of the barriers. So hopefully not just for Heroes, but other games as well. We'll start to see more involvement from Blizz.
Right.
Thinking about the format and the structure for Creators of the Storm, you know, as you say, it's a really complex setup. You've got a lot to do in a very short space of time. Is there an ambition down the line? Like, if you could almost forget the logistics for a minute and the fact that you guys aren't going to have to play, and you know all the hard work that goes into it, what would Creators of the Storm look like to you? Would it be more than a one-day event? Like, what would you love to do in the future? And I'm just giving you a free canvas, just
months long, you know.
No, I actually told Daz when we started talking about this one, I wanted to do a 2-day event, but I knew logistically that didn't make sense. I think that's the best way to do it. There are so many properties out there doing Heroes of the Storm content, and not just podcasts. There are streamers out there. There are sites that just write about it. People like that who I want to also include in this event. But the only way you can fit it in one day, like we're stretching it as it is now, is 4 teams and do a quick group stage and then go into 2 semifinals and a final. And as it is, it's like an 11-hour day. I'd love to stretch it to 2 days or maybe go a little bit more than that so that we could really do like a full-blown tournament. But then you run into other like logistical problems. How do you make sure that people are still engaged? Do people really care about the group stage if that's 2 weeks before the finals, right? Like, and you get into like this weird, it's hard to build hype around community sites like you can build around HGC, right? Because there's a difference between, hey, we sit here and we talk about Heroes to you guys every week, an hour and a half at a time, versus, hey, I play professionally and you want to see what I can do, right? So I think we probably found the sweet spot, but I'd love to do a weekend long one at some point.
you don't want to water it down too much, right? Like LiQuiD's saying, I make sure you keep people engaged. You gotta have a lot of cool like content interviews afterwards. And if you did this kind of thing over like multiple weekends or made it like long and drawn out, I think you'd lose viewers pretty quickly. Like a lot of people would just maybe tune in for like the finals and like the semifinals and such. But we want it to be like an all day event where you can sit down, you can watch it maybe like, you know, throughout your afternoon or whatever, and like meet some new characters. Maybe some people will meet and see how bad Tarley and Gary are at the game. Like, I want to hear what these guys have to say about maybe other games. And
you
then,
wait and see.
You know, stuff like that.
I can see
I'm
it.
going to be a surprise.
I'm just
You're
surprised. Like
him.
HGC, you know, I don't know why we were complaining about 2 support meta all those months ago. Why weren't we complaining about 5 support meta? Like, why wasn't that just the tournament ender?
Maybe we'll define the new meta, right?
Yeah. Exactly. That'd be really cool to see Giddy talk about, you know, we saw this really cool thing. This guy called Tarley kind of started killing minions all game with Malthael and this.
And it worked.
And it worked. Completely changed the entire game.
Just a
If
little
GillyWeed
tip.
says my name, I'll be excited. So.
Yeah, it turns out Bloodlust Stimdrone Tasdar is scary. That happens against us when we play that all supports game.
Now imagine that with Archon post level 20. That's even worse.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
Oh God.
That crushed us last year, so be aware.
The weird
All
strats
right.
you get to pull out there because you're like a lot of these things you don't think about. Like, how do you draft for the other team? You know, in a reverse draft situation, even
Murky, you know, the other team has to have a Murky.
Murky did make it into that match.
he did.
It's like one of those weird philosophy questions, like, you know, if a tree falls down in a forest, no one can hear it, you know, does it make a sound? Like, if your team is made up entirely of healers, who do you flame for when healing sucks? Like, you flame yourself? Like, God, I suck
and
so bad.
any of our opponents, if they end up listening to this episode, they're going to hear, all right, Tarley only plays support, so we're going to draft him something that is not a support. There you go.
You'll be fine. And I guess finally to close off, because I know we're stretching out and we want to do a 20 questions, but what matchup are you most hyped up for? I know we perhaps can't talk about too much about the fixtures, but is there a particular team or a particular combination you're really keen to see play out in this tournament?
Well, I mean, last time around when me and LiQuiD were playing in the game, we played against Gankbush, which I mean, I guess it's technically your guys' team this time around too, and we had a wager with them. We ended up winning, and the wager was that they had to like read a script of like our choosing on their show, and we like made them like say some pretty crazy things and stuff. That was a lot of fun, and I was kind of hoping we'd be able to do that again. But me and LiQuiD aren't playing, so maybe you guys will have to throw out a challenge to another team and like maybe make some sort of wager. But other than that, I think the one matchup I really want to see is just because I know they've got a lot of history together. Is TBK Zord from Lords of the Storm play against Zexrus from well, I guess now just from Nexus Commentaries. He used to be part of Heroes Power Hour, but they just actually had their last episode last week. Zexrus is notoriously, I'm not sure if you call him good, but cheeky Chen player. So I want to see him pull out Chen against TBK Zord and just make his day horrible. So that's what I want to see.
I'm looking forward to seeing what Solid Jake does with some of the rule sets and like just how his team works together mostly. So we'll see how that goes.
And of course, everyone's going to want to check out Geeks of Azeroth and Gankbush Squad. You know, who knows what combinations we'll come up with. I'm sure we'll break the game somewhere and it will gain eternal gloating rights. Who knows?
Everybody thinks that going in, man.
I'll be shouting their praises from the casting booth. That's all I'm going to say.
Storm is going to be so impressed. They're just going to draft me on the spot. So that's really what's going to happen.
That'd be the dream, but then you wouldn't be able to host this show anymore, Tarley.
That's true. So never mind.
Yeah, you have to turn them down.
I know you're thinking about it. Don't consider me.
Isn't that
I decline.
the right price to pay? Like, I don't know. I would take that deal.
Yeah, you know what? I might. Unless Geeks of Azeroth counterpays me even higher.
Ups the squad. Yeah, that won't happen. Awesome. Well, you know, we got a bit of a flow going. Normally, I would stick in a 20 question segment, but I think we might as well just jump in with 20 questions. So, explain the format to Daz LiQuiuD. Well, you've played this before, I'm sure. And it's 20 questions. I have the answer. I've decided. I've chosen something that we should all roughly know of. I didn't choose something like some obscure part of Diablo lore or something like that. And yeah, I'm going to let you guys take the floor. I'm sticking the questions you ask in the show notes, and as always, Twitch can ask questions and they don't count towards the maximum. So take it away.
Does your character wear a hat?
No, my character doesn't wear a hat.
Wait, but did we decide that it was a character already?
No, we didn't. That was a totally obscure question.
I'm gonna let you have that one off.
Just say you start a little bit more of a.
Give me a bit of a warm up, Tarley.
Okay, so for a real first question, I'm gonna just knock this one out real quick. Is this from Heroes of the Storm?
This is from Heroes of the Storm.
Okay.
That would have been my question too. I was really hoping that you'd say yes to that one.
I was going to give that to you and say it's from HOTS, but I'd want to make you use a question for it because I think
I've been studying all the other games like non-stop since you invited us on the show just to prepare for this segment. You throw it down from HOTS anyways.
Is it a character, like a playable character?
It's not a playable character.
Oh, that changes things. Okay, so now I can't pull up my list of heroes now.
Is this a place?
Not a place, no.
Is it is it a character? So is it a character? So it may not be playable, but is it still a character?
It is a character.
Okay.
Ooh. Oh. Is it the Raven Lord?
Oh, for God's sake! It is the Raven Lord. That's Oh Jesus! I worried about it when we got to non-playable character, but I didn't think. Okay, fair enough. I just thought it could be. You were going to choose anything else. Minions. It could have been anything.
That about wraps up Geeks. Awesome way to wrap up the show. I want to thank our guests, Daz and LiQuiuD, for joining us. As always, you can check out Geeks of Azeroth on twitch.tv/Geeks of Azeroth and on Twitter @Geeks of Azeroth and on iTunes and Stitcher or your favorite podcasting platform. Daz and LiQuiuD, tell our listeners where we can find you and your podcast and how they can tune in to Creators of the Storm.
LiQuiuD, you can go first, bud.
Okay, so you can find me on Troll and HGC Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. on Twitch. That's 7:30 p.m. Eastern, twitch.tv/TrollsGG. You can also follow me on Twitter @LiQuiuDGG. I tweet when I do pretty much anything.
Yeah, you can catch the Nexus Trolls. Both myself, LiQuiuD, and Mystic host that. Just a general Heroes of the Storm podcast. It's on Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. You think I might have done this before. Twitch.tv/TrollsGG. You can follow me on Twitter at DazHots, or you can just follow our network as well at TrollsGG. Creators of the Storm is a couple Saturdays from now, February 24th, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I haven't done all the conversions for all the different time zones. It's going to be at twitch.tv/TrollsGG. And we also have trolls.gg/COTS is the website for it. COTS is just short for Creators of the Storm. All the info is going to be up there. We're going to be putting up schedules and stuff and videos, promo videos and cool things for it over the next couple weeks. Definitely check that out. It's going to be a great time.
Britzza, where can we find you on the interwebs?
You can find me at @NotRavenLord. No, not really. At Britzza_EG, where I always am.
On Twitter, of course. And Gary?
On Twitter.
At EpicGeeksGary on Twitter.
And of course, you can always contact the show with your question, shout out your well wishes for my death in Creators of the Storm. Send all that to geeksofazerotheg@gmail.com. Remember to check us out on epicgeeks.co.uk and consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/geeksofazeroth. Otherwise, everyone have a great week in Azeroth or Heroes of the Storm or whatever Blizzard game you play. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
A few moments later.
We're making logos for all the teams, so you guys are gonna have your own team logo.
Yes. I'm gonna get that tattooed right next to my StarCraft.
There you go.
I think Fringe wanted Bushgeeks, but I was like, I don't know if Blizzard would like that too much.
Yes, please. That. Yeah.
This podcast is part of the Epic Geeks Network. To find out more about our other gaming podcasts, head to epicgeeks.co.uk.